what this government has done and to recognize it and place it on record. Whether we like it or not, the government has succeeded in restoring territorial integrity and establishing a higher level of security. Beyond that, if you recall, May 2015, there was a raging energy crisis, whether it's fuel, whether it's electricity, failures all over the place. Well, again, that has abated. Beyond that, the state governments, pretty much insolvent 18 months ago, well, again, they've seen some relief to their finances. We've seen the introduction of a flexible exchange rate regime, although I will speak to that a short while from now. And we must also recognize the improved fiscal discipline, the blockages of leakages, and the improvement of compliance. However, we commend all of these, even if we think some of them still are work in progress. But let me make this point to those who are our leaders. Your Excellency, I do crave your indulgence. We don't live in the past. It's not going to be about what has been done. It will always be about what remains to be done. So whether we like it or not, whilst you will doubtless to be praised for those things that you have done, but it is those things that remain undone, that remain to be done, that impinge and pinch on us as a nation. And it is against those gaps that you will be measured. One area where I think the government does itself a huge disservice is that it doesn't communicate well. I am aware of many things that are going on. I am aware of many things that are going on. Indeed, when the Honorable Minister mentioned a short while ago the need for roadmaps, there are roadmaps in various parts of the government. There's an agricultural roadmap, there's an education roadmap, there are roadmaps. But then, as I said earlier, these roadmaps need to be brought together, articulated, joined together into a development plan that the private sector can understand and take its lead from. Whether we like it or not, that is an imperative that must be achieved before the end of this year. Let me quickly deal with the summit theme and place it in the context of my remarks. Made in Nigeria. Oh yes, I don't think anybody would argue about that. Well, let me quickly explain my appearance that does not appear to be made in Nigeria. Well, as I explained to the first person who drew my attention to this, today for me is a work day. And as one of those who takes instructions, you dress as your bosses tell you to dress. And two of my bosses are in this audience, and I don't think they'd be happy to see me otherwise. But hey, let's worry about that. Now, back to Made in Nigeria. The call for Made in Nigeria is a call to create and sustain a productive economy. If we cannot do that, we don't give ourselves a chance. What is Made in Nigeria about? Oh yes, Nigeria producing those things that she uses. Today, and I was shocked when I was having to make this, preparing for this, I had to look to see how we are doing. Believe it or not, for every 100 naira of value that the industrial sector, and when I say industrial sector, I take out oil and solid minerals. For every 100 naira of value created, 20% goes on imports. Let me re-emphasize that. 20 naira out of every 100 of value created goes in imports in the industrial sector. How do the other sectors do? Transport and oil do about 30%. Minerals do about 78%. Now, this speaks to the need for a review and policy direction on local content for Nigeria. We cannot continue at this rate to do the kinds of import values that we do. It's not that imports are inherently bad. The question is, if we are exporting so much of our value created in imports, we are leaving so little for ourselves. If you look at the numbers, unemployment today is rising. Not surprisingly, if the economy is contracting. But let's take a particular demography that's very important. In the age group of 15 to 25, more than half of that demography is either unemployed or underemployed. Please bear that in mind. To think that Nigeria is a young population where pretty much half of our population is in the age group between 1 day and 25 years old. If so many are either unemployed or underemployed, we destroy hope. We create a fundamental systemic challenge for social coherence and economic progress. We create a fundamental challenge for economic inclusiveness. If this is to be the Nigeria for everybody, then the economy has to be inclusive. Made in Nigeria is not anything that we have a choice about. So that's unemployment. If we are going to create a globally competitive economy, whether we like it or not, it's about made in Nigeria. If we cannot produce it here and use it here, then we've got a real problem. If made in Nigeria is going to be successful, what then? The first, there are a number of points that I will raise. First of all, Nigeria must recognize global trends, identify those that are disadvantageous and manage them, whilst looking at those that offer opportunities and exploiting those opportunities. I've already spoken about oil and the impact of shale. One area that Nigeria must get away from urgently is that determination for a strong currency. Oh, please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying leave our currency unmanaged. However, what is the management of our currency aimed at? We have to work for a currency that puts us at our most optimal in the global economy. We must work for a currency that enables us to be productive, that gives advantage to Nigerian producers in the face of international competition. Other countries, especially in Asia, have used the auspices of a weak currency combined with other policies that deal with social challenges to grow. I see no reason why we don't. A strong currency sucks in imports, subsidizes the middle class at the expense of pretty much everybody. The policy environment must improve very, very sharply. It must be consistent, it must be stable, but at the heart of it, it must be internally coherent. We cannot have a situation where fiscal, monetary, and regulatory policy are looking in different directions. They must complement each other, but at the heart of all of them, they must convey sure-footedness on the part of our economic managers. We cannot continue to have a situation where, whether we like it or not, policy managers don't recognize the risk of investment. Investment is about risk-taking. And if that is the case, our policy environment must be such that we show investors, doesn't matter whether they're local or international, that they are welcome and that their investments are going to be protected because we wish them to succeed. From time to time, our position hasn't always demonstrated that. Whether we like it or not, our policies must create advantages for those operating in Nigeria. I cannot understand, at least if my friends in the pharmaceutical industry are to be believed, they tell me, and I'm surprised, that whilst you can import certain drugs which you could manufacture in Nigeria free, the raw materials for the imports of those same drugs, you have to pay duty at 5%. And the packaging materials for those same products, you must pay duty at 10%. What are we doing? We're exporting jobs, whether we like it or no, whether we know it or not. Our policy position has to change and understand that. The point I make about investment is particularly important when we say private investments. Yes, the Honorable Minister has made the point very eloquently about private investors and the private sector being granted access to what were ordinarily government positions. That's fine. Question is, does the supporting policy environment provide the kind of encouragement that the verbal assurances by the Honorable Minister seek to provide? Whether we like it or not, as I said, investors have to be encouraged. Yes, infrastructure, certainly, but we need rapidly. Look, take the point. Nigeria's infrastructure master plan is $100 billion of investment every year for 30 years. All our budgets, federal, states, local government, don't amount to that much. Question then becomes, where do you get the money from? Unless we create a framework that encourages private sector investments into these sectors urgently, and I repeat, urgently, Nigeria stands the chance of continuing to be left behind and lagging in performance. As I said, in the short term, 4 things I would advocate. The first, as I said, confidence and sure-footedness. The second, the articulation of a development plan which articulates our development preferences and our development paths. The third, fiscal and monetary policy must complement each other. The fourth, public procurement of made in Nigeria goods become an imperative. It's not about saying it. It would have been interesting to learn what proportion of the government's budget, even if only at the federal level, gets spent on procurement of made in Nigeria goods and services. It's very important that competitiveness must be our watchword. As I said earlier, Nigeria ranks very poorly in global competitiveness and global ease of doing business. I honestly don't see any reason why over the next 2.5 years, Nigeria cannot move up 20, 30 places as far as these indices are concerned. We all know what it takes. The question is, are we really ready to do it? Finally, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, if made in Nigeria is to be successful, it's not a federal endeavor. Yes, the federal government has a role to play, but each of the 36 states and indeed the Federal Capital Territory has a major role to play. These states in particular must create economies where agriculture sinks into production, into processing, in such a way that the economies are themselves viable, such that it's not about civil servants' pay that drives economic purchasing power. Nigeria must move away from the models that we have passed on till now. As I said, Your Excellency, Honorable Ministers, the current state of the economy is not ideal, but for me, it provides the best platform for us to move if truly we so desire to succeed with Made in Nigeria. Thank you very much.